Hi, this is Wayne from swimmingcyclingrunning.com, and we're finally getting round to speed in triathlon training. And the reason I started this, or looking at this, is because someone came to our triathlon camp in February, and I wasn't able to be there because of an operation on my head that I had to have suddenly the day I was meant to leave. But the other people who went, and everyone did go, said that there was a guy there who was doing Ironman, but into long distance training. He said, "Oh, I'm in my long distance base phase and I'm not going to do any interval work." And that got me thinking that, hang on a second, I wish I was there for a start, because this person is training hard for an Ironman and to do a specific time in Ironman. And if you're trying to do that in any race, speed is very important, and speed doesn't become less important because you're going through your base phase. It's just less. It takes up less volume than it would in other phases of your training. So I think he had it wrong, and I think a lot of people do this. They say, I'm on a long, slow distance, that's what I'm doing and that's all I'm doing. But that really negates a major part of your training. Seb Coe's dad said, if you really want to run fast, don't ever get too far from speed. And I think he's correct. If you want to do anything fast, don't get too far from speed, even if you're in another phase of your training. Keep speed as a major aim, otherwise you're not going to have the speed when you actually do want it, and it's going to be very difficult to gear up to that particular speed that you want. Fartlek runs would be speed coupled with long slow distance. Even if you did that type of thing, it would be better than ignoring speed completely. If you look at the training of the long distance runners, especially marathon runners, you'll often see them throughout the year do sets like 20 times 400 meters, and they'll be looking, they might do them off 2 minutes, but they're looking to come in at about 59 seconds to do a really good marathon. So a marathon runner throughout the year is looking at their speed and making sure they keep it up. 20 times 400 meters is obviously only 8,000 meters, but that 8,000 meters is done at speed to make sure that they have the speed in their legs necessary to do the marathon. We're going to go to the computer and just look at speed, because everyone is interested in speed. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You might be doing an Ironman just to finish, or an Ironman to do in 15 hours, 10 hours, or you might be doing your first Olympic or sprint race. But whatever you think, you do want to aim for a specific speed because you want to do it in a time. And if you want to do it in any time, you need to practice speed, and you need to practice that speed throughout the year. So I think it's a mistake not to do that. Alright, so we'll go to the computer and we'll speak to you later.
Okay, we're going in front of the computer and we're going to look at two potential Ironman targets. And you can see this is a target sheet that I would fill in for a private client. So we're going to do the first one as an Ironman finish, so that's 17 hours. Let's look at some speeds that might, or some timings that might make sense. For the 3.8 kilometre swim, I'm going to suggest 1 hour 16 minutes. That's quite reasonable. 5 minutes in the first transition, quite slow but reasonable again. 180.2 kilometre cycle in 10 hours. We're going to aim for another 5 minutes in transition. Then a 42 kilometre marathon in 5 hours 15 minutes. And that relates to various speeds. For example, in the swim, we're going to go at 2 minutes per 100 meters, 120 seconds per 100 meters. In the bike, we're going to have to cycle at 18.02 kilometers an hour. That's just about 11.2 miles per hour. And in the run, we're going to run 8 kilometers an hour. Now, it doesn't seem fast, but to everyone looking to do their first marathon, certainly their first Ironman, we would suggest a run-walk strategy from the beginning. So let's assume that someone can run to 11 kilometers an hour. We would assume they run for something 6 to 8 minutes, and then they walk for 2 minutes right from the beginning. So that's the strategy that they know they're going to do all the way through the race. That actually brings this particular timing in at 16 hours 41 minutes, which leaves 19 minutes for any problems that occur, any toilet stops that are necessary suddenly. If any of the things go wrong, if you have a small puncture, you should be able to fix it in about 19 minutes. So that is a realistic speed set that should get you through Ironman in under 17 hours. And anybody should be able to look at those and say, right, I reckon those timings I could potentially do. They're not particularly difficult, but they are timings and they are speeds, and those speeds have to be practiced. And if you don't practice them, you probably aren't going to hit them. When it gets even more important is if you're looking at specific times to come in on. So, for example, 15 hours is dropping 2 hours from that, and I'm going to suggest that it would be reasonable to drop 10 minutes on the swim, a minute in transition, an hour on the bike, and about 45 minutes on the run. Again, second transition I'd say is 4 minutes instead of 5 as well, so we've saved a minute there. Now, if we did that, we're moving to 104.21 seconds per 100 meters, which is 145 seconds per 100 meters, which again is quite reasonable even for a seasoned Ironman competitor. The cycle speed has gone up by 2 kilometers an hour to 20.02 kilometers an hour, and again that should be fairly reasonable for anyone who's at least done an Ironman previously. The run, however, goes up to 9.33 kilometers an hour. Then that's not particularly difficult, but I would expect then you to be running, let's say, at 12 kilometers an hour, or take it at 10 kilometers an hour and walk for less during the marathon, but still have a 9-minute run, 1-minute walk strategy, something like that. And that brings us in 14:44, which leaves 15 minutes, 16 minutes for anything to happen, and it generally can happen in an Ironman. Nothing necessarily runs smoothly, but these speeds have to be practiced, and if you are being pushed at 120, you're definitely going to be pushed at 104 seconds. So you have to practice those speeds, and not practicing them in the long, slow distance period is rather silly. You probably can go well over 20 kilometers an hour as an average, and you certainly should be able to go faster than 20 kilometers an hour as an average if you're just doing a cycle for, say, 4 or 5 hours. If you can't do more than that, then you're not going to do your Ironman in 9 hours. It's just not going to happen. So you do have to look at your speed, you have to practice going faster speed, and even break it down. So, for example, you might do 10 kilometers as close to 30 kilometers an hour as you possibly can. And that would be a reasonable training session, even in the winter, for someone aiming for this type of timing. In terms of run speed, you want something like 12, 13, 14 kilometers an hour at those lower distances, so 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers, 15, 20 kilometers, half marathon. And unless you can do that, unless you can plan to do that, you're not going to make your time, and you actually have to slow yourself down simply because of the overall distance that you're having to race.
Most people who don't want to practice speed believe that what they've got to do is just build a base. That's what they're doing. We're building a base. We're building our base fitness. But base fitness isn't the only thing you need practice at one time. There's no reason why one section of training needs to only include one set of exercises. In fact, if you lose track of your speed, you really are losing track of your purpose at the end of a season when you're really starting to race well. All racing is about speed. It's not about long, slow distance. You might be saying, okay, from a sprint I have to slow myself down to do a standard distance, and I have to slow myself further down to do a half, and I have to slow myself further down to do a full Ironman. But that's a calculated thing based on shorter and shorter distances. It's an absolute fact that the best long distance runners are also very fast short distance runners. Not in the 100 metres, but for example, a marathoner will be a good 10k runner, will be a good half marathon runner. And all of those shorter distances do track work throughout the year and work on their speed. They never forget their speed. And I don't think you should either. So there you go, that's my blog this week. Next week we'll probably be talking about the Olympics. It's on, you know. Alright, see you then. Keep well.